Hey everyone, welcome back to FinanceRox. I'm excited today to have Doug Cunnington back on the channel. If you guys missed our earlier interviews, Doug is the creator and owner of nichesiteproject.com. He is a PMP, with which, if you're unfamiliar, project management professional. It's a difficult certification to obtain, so it's cool to have a PMP on the channel. And I'm excited that he's going to share some tips for us from his course, the Productivity Masterclass. And so I'm really excited to have you. Doug, welcome to the channel.
Hey, Roxanne, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about all that stuff.
Yeah. So I would expect that people would wonder right off the bat, why is project management important for personal finance? Why are we talking about it today? So I just wanted to share, I think of personal finance as a project. It's one kind of project to pay off debt. You have kind of a list of tasks and habits that are going to help you to achieve that goal. You might think of like increasing your income as a project or, cutting spending in food as a project. So I was wondering, Doug, does that meet your definition of a project as well? Is that how you think of it?
Actually, I never thought of it that way, or that you were even going to ask
I'm
that,
sorry.
because which is great, because I think you could frame things however you need to. And it's
Yeah.
funny because you talk about personal finance, so why wouldn't you ask that specific question? So I should have thought of that. But that's I think that's something where you can connect the dots. So I'll just speak sort of broadly, because project management, especially the PMP area, can get very heavy in jargon and corporate kind of red tape, really. If people are kind of familiar with project management, there's a lot of that can happen. But when I peel back all the layers of the onion here, there's a nice feedback loop and continuous improvement idea from project management. And I think that could be really useful for all those examples that you gave, where you execute on something, you evaluate where you're at, and then you adjust from there. So I think that's really relevant. From a pure project standpoint, you could apply some of the things that make a set of work a project with a definite beginning and an end and a goal that you're aiming towards. So yes, you could make all those things a project for sure.
Yeah, I think maybe I kind of think of them synonymously, goal setting and project management. But I guess goal setting would be kind of under the umbrella of project management. But all right.
Yep. And you can use like the ideas from project management or goal setting and vice versa, and pick out the things that you need for whatever you're trying to do. And I think that's the key, because again, if you get too deep into the project management area, you can be too strict and not flexible enough. And I think it's really important to be flexible, especially when you have the freedom to be flexible on your own projects and there's no boss telling you, hey, you have to do things this way.
Okay. Yeah, so when it comes to goal setting, I think that is one of the downsides. A lot of people think of it as really set in stone, like you set a goal and it has to be, a certain way. But I love flexibility. So there are different types of project management, right? Where some allow for more flexibility than others. So it's interesting to hear you talk about that. Do you prefer more like agile project management, like kind of getting feedback as you go?
Yeah, definitely. I had a corporate gig for a while, and the early years, it was before Agile got as popular for the bigger companies that I was working for. And later, right before I got laid off, they were shifting to Agile or small pieces, and kind of like I said, cherry picking certain things that were useful for whatever we were trying to do that wouldn't upset too many people. In a big company, you could imagine people don't like change, like no matter what the change is. So yeah, I like the agile approach. And for the work that I do now, it fits in perfectly, where maybe I'll do sprints of work, get some feedback. I don't try to plan too far ahead, which may seem counterintuitive, especially when you think about the Productivity Masterclass and the project management. I'm far more flexible than it might sound.
Yeah. And I think that that's a great thing to point out. Like I said, I don't think that everyone, really realizes that there is a method that you can use for projects that, you know, like you said, you can kind of adjust as you go, get feedback. Instead of getting feedback from a boss, you're essentially getting feedback from customers. Or for personal finance, you get feedback from your budget or your net worth statement to see, is what I'm doing working? All right, cool. So one of the things I was interested in your course that I hadn't heard of was the idea of effective versus efficient. And so I was wondering, could you define that for us? And how does that help us with projects?
So effectiveness is doing the things that will actually get you closer to your goal or whatever you're trying to accomplish. And efficiency is doing things well and maybe being able to do them fast, for example. And I think the perfect way to demonstrate this is, well, to give examples. So a person might be able to be very efficient with replying back to emails. So I get a ton of emails and I'm actually pretty good at it, right? I can reply back to hundreds of emails per day. But if I look at what I'm actually trying to accomplish, let's say I'm trying to launch a new website and there's all these activities related to that. If I'm replying back to emails, hundreds of emails per day for a week, that's probably not helping me reach my goal at all. Usually, emails are a very poor way to spend your time. However, I could work on the website and do it very slowly. Maybe I'm very inefficient with building a website because things take time. Each little piece I may want to double or triple check. So I could be very slow, very inefficient, but I could be highly effective at building the website. And at the end of the day, that would be far more valuable. It helps me reach my goal, probably a more profitable activity. So that's a very good example of effectiveness versus efficiency. And you could probably think of examples of, people that that maybe they don't spend the time on the right things. And that's where it really comes down to: spending time on the right stuff that gets you closer to the goal versus being busy for being busy's sake, right? Some people just do that and they feel like they're getting more done because they are multitasking, in air quotes, where maybe they're on a meeting, they're writing some emails and they're listening to a podcast or something, and they're really not getting much done, but they feel very busy.
Mm. I'm actually listening to a podcast right now. No, I'm just kidding. I am horrible at this, trying to prioritize, making sure that I'm doing what's important. I'm super guilty of just picking what's easy or what's urgent when it comes to, what task am I going to do right now? So I really like this idea and I want to try to incorporate this more. Um, and for people, that are trying to improve their personal finances, I was wondering, what would you consider to be effective and efficient for that? Could you think of any examples?
So we may have to brainstorm together. I hope you thought of a couple too, because I'm not sure how many I have. I will
That's
say,
okay.
when you think about the effectiveness part, and that's the most important thing, probably you can narrow it down to expenses and what you're bringing in, so your income roughly. And if you look at those two metrics, that'll probably get you pretty close to what you need to focus on. And then you can go from there. Like I said, you could adjust and be a little flexible. As far as efficiency, I I don't actually use any fancy tools or anything for my personal finance, just a couple of simple spreadsheets. And I think one could use apps or some other tools to make it a little easier to track things if you're interested in that. But I honestly don't track much. Like once we, my wife and I, have figured out what we like to spend money on and we've trimmed things that we don't care about too much, once it's in place, you really don't have to think about it and you're quite effective without having to use additional tools or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I agree with all that. I think savings rate, what you're talking about, income and expenses as being like one of the most important metrics for tracking for your finance because it gives you that big number impact. I think net worth would probably be another one that's kind of like a big picture, you know, really being able to really focusing on that, because that's, ultimately your assets and liabilities. And that's really, at the end of the day, building wealth or financial security for yourself, what matters. I did think of a couple examples of maybe efficiencies, researching Mint versus YNAB versus EveryDollar. What software are you going to use to track your spending? I think that people kind of get caught in the loop of, trying to have the most efficient system possible, trying to have the perfect system, and then maybe even going back and forth between them or researching for hours. That's kind of like email, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you start using a system and then you're thinking, oh, maybe this one is incrementally better, it probably doesn't matter if it's like 5 or 10% better, honestly. And I usually just don't worry about optimizing to that level. It's fun to do, and there's probably some areas where I spend too much time trying to optimize, but I have relaxed in other areas, and I'm just, if I'm mostly moving in the right direction most of the time, I'm happy with that. So I can't remember the original question, but you mentioned comparing a couple apps, and yeah, I think it could be a total waste of time if you're trying to optimize for the last 5% of efficiency.
Yeah. I guess I kind of got that idea from a podcast. Are you familiar with the productivity show, TPS? No, it's
I'm
really
not.
good. I really enjoy that podcast, but they talk about how people get stuck hopping between different project management tools, like trying Trello and then switching to Asana, building their own spreadsheet, doing bullet journal, like going back and forth between all the different kinds instead of focusing on getting stuff done, right?
Right. Yep, exactly. And I mean, I have been guilty of that in the past. And then speaking of Trello, I actually use Trello for most of my content management and some other things like that. And it just works fine. The systems are easy. I'm using it for YouTube and my podcast and my other podcast just because you don't have to train people on it. Like it's pretty straightforward, where if you're using anything complicated, there's a whole training mechanism you have to figure out, and it could be confusing if you're bringing on contractors or any kind of other people in there.
Yeah, simple. Try to keep it simple
Yeah.
when you can. I also thought about budgeting, kind of just over planning, getting stuck in planning mode and not really moving on to action. Since, budget, what you're really doing is, planning your spending and income in the future. And I think a lot of people who budget, do use that as a tool to determine how their spending today will be and to, encourage them to cut back or make more. But yeah, I thought that might be an example too of
Mhm.
efficiency, but
And I think, and this could be a little off, but as I mentioned, I feel like once you dial things in and you know what you're spending on, and I don't know, I'm a creature of habit, I guess. So I'm usually not going out and buying new things that are outside of the ordinary on impulse. Either I've just gotten used to it. I guess so, because I used to buy dumb stuff all the time. And then I got over it, I suppose. And then I don't have the urge. I'm not walking around looking to buy stuff that I'm not in need of. I just ignore it. So I don't know.
yeah. Do you use that question? So I've heard this, a few people say this in, personal finance, like, will this purchase help me get closer to my goal or farther from it? Kind of having a few guiding questions like that might be a good way to make sure that your personal finances are more effective, right? Just it's that prioritization of what's really important and what's really helpful.
Yes, that's a very good idea. I don't think I do that explicitly or not as a habit, but just the other day, I was thinking about this. So we're going to get a new TV soon, and we have a TV that works, and we're going to move it downstairs because we're going to build a little gym down there, and the TV will be fine. The point is, there's a wide range of televisions out there, and anything that we get is going to be better than what we have. And it'll make me probably tiny little bit happier. But when you're looking at a TV that's $500 versus say $1,200, same size, they look really close. I mean, they are almost identical. And again, we're kind of talking like we're going 90% to like 98%. It's only a little bit better. And it turns out when I look at it a little closer, the more expensive TV is not twice as good as the other one. It's not going to make me twice as happy for sure. It's just a little bit different, a little bit sharper, and maybe you could see it from a sharper image from a different angle or something. I don't even know why the TV costs that much more. So anyway, after going through that exercise, I realized, you know what, the $500 or $600 TV is probably perfect because I'm not going to appreciate the twice the cost. It's not going to make me twice as happy, which is kind of my guiding principle right now. So I think it's different for everyone, and you should figure out, hey, you know, what is my goal here? Is it getting me closer to the goal? And then you can look at each decision that way. So yeah, Roxanne, that's perfect.
Yeah, value add. I like that. That is exactly what I was kind of getting at. Are you going to stop going to your old gym? Is that why you're building a gym downstairs?
You know, I'm going to go to it a little bit still, because just to get out of the house, there's more equipment over there. But it's very convenient to just go downstairs, and occasionally it's cold here. It's not too often, but every now and then it'll be nice to just work out downstairs.
Yeah, reduce the barrier to start a habit that you want to keep, right? Reduce the
Yeah,
barrier.
that's right.
um, let's see. Hopefully that question didn't seem weird. You mentioned it on your interview with Carl Jensen, Mr. 1500 Days. I recently watched that. So yeah, anyway.
No, that's a good question.
Okay. So just along the theme of how do you prioritize what you're going to do, you know, what's important. You mentioned the Eisenhower Matrix. So do you want to kind of give just a super brief overview of what that is and how that impacts that decision?
Number one, I probably do a poor job on a day-to-day basis because it's really easy to pull yourself in the wrong direction. So the main idea with the Eisenhower Matrix is you have activities that are important and you have activities that are urgent, and there's some overlap. So you may have activities that are urgent and important. That would be something like a fire in your office that you need to immediately put out. Very important, very urgent to get the fire put out, like a literal fire.
An actual fire.
Yeah. And then you have like maybe some garbage task, right? So it's a not urgent and it's not important. Maybe it's an email from someone that you don't care about, which now that I'm thinking back, just before we started talking, I was like sending emails to people that don't even matter, right? They pitched me with something I'm not interested, and I'm basically wasting my time. I should just honestly just ignore those emails and not even reply. So you have those two, right? Super important, super urgent, got to do it. And then you have not important, not urgent. So you don't have to worry about those. Then you have, and you can steer me back because I think you've read some of this material more recently than I have. So you have important tasks that are maybe not urgent. That could be doing your taxes, which I'm currently putting off right now. So it's very important to do, but you could put it off for a little while and get away with it. So that's what I've been doing. Then you have your urgent, not important tasks. And these are perhaps emails that, again, I'm keep going back to emails, but maybe emails feel urgent because you get some notification, but it's not really important for you to reply back. So it could be an email from someone and you just need to get back to them. So there's some things. Yep, your accountant. Yeah. So there are some things that you can do with the, the various tasks. The urgent and important, those are easy to figure out. Like you probably need to do them. If it's something that is important but not urgent, you probably need to put it on your schedule and figure out when you're going to do it. Maybe it's something that you spend a little time on each week so you get closer to achieving whatever you need to. And then if it's urgent but not important, perhaps you could delegate it. So that's a good thing to have maybe a virtual assistant do, or you could batch those tasks as well. If you don't have a team working for you, or you're not part of an organization where you can have some delegation in play, you could batch those. So batching emails is what I usually try to do, or maybe what I should do. I don't always do it because it's easy to get in the inbox and then you're not batching it in an effective way. So did I describe that pretty well?
Yeah, that was great. You mentioned fire in the office as being both important and urgent. And then you said garbage task, which made me laugh because I say that too, garbage this. So you could have unimportant and not urgent task be taking out the garbage would be an example of, and I'm guilty of that too. Like you see a one little tiny task and you're like, oh, I'll just do this quick. But not taking that time to prioritize, oh no, this is my focused work block. I'm supposed to be doing this right now. You take the trash out, you notice the laundry on your way back. Maybe this is an ADD thing, or maybe this is an everybody thing.
Yeah. No, that's a perfect thing to procrastinate on too. And I was talking to a friend the other day, and if I'm trying to stay off task and not do the work that I was planning on doing, I'll sweep or clean up and like vacuum, because it's kind of productive, right? The wife likes that. People like it clean. And it's literally me just trying to avoid doing the thing that I need to do.
You can focus better once your space is organized and cleaned.
That is an excuse I could make for that. Yeah.
It's so tempting. It's so hard to notice when I'm doing that and steer myself back on track.
Yep.
So you mentioned in the course, you share a story about when you were writing your book, and you mentioned that you had to deprioritize some other things in your life to make space for it. So this reminded me of, I think it was the 12-week year. Have you read that book? Are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar with it. I haven't read it.
Okay. That was the first time I had heard anyone mention like intentional imbalance, intentionally like getting your work-life balance. It's kind of unrealistic, right? To expect yourself to be able to do all the things at once. So can you kind of talk about like, why did you deprioritize? What did you deprioritize for how long? That kind of thing.
Yeah, this was back, just a little context. So I started working online just as a side hustle back in 2013. I still had my day job at the time, and I started a blog, Niche Site Project, and I pre-sold a book. So just from a marketing standpoint, I came up with an idea for a product. I spec'd it out. It was an ebook, and essentially created an outline and let people know, here's what you're going to get. And then I pre-sold it, which is a great way to prove your product and prove the product market fit, and then actually get people to buy it. So if you pre-sell something, typically you sell it at a discount, which I did. And I got 10 or 11 people to pay me $100 for an ebook. And at that point, I have their money. They want the product. So that is one of the best motivators. There was a deadline. Hey, you're going to get the book on this day. And I had very clear marching orders. So that's a great way to get things done, is to have a deadline and to have already accepted money from people. And I just want to also mention, this is kind of a standard practice in a lot of, I guess, marketing and a lot of digital products. Is fairly standard. People can get in early, save money, and they're helping prove the product. And these are your true fans that want to see you do a good job. So with that said, I was very motivated to get it done. I have tons of hobbies. I brew a homebrew beer. At that time, I was running a lot of half marathons. So I was running a lot. I have, friends and family like normal folks, and just probably waste a decent amount of time doing goofy stuff. Mm. So because I had such a clear deadline, I think I had 6 weeks to deliver, I decided I want to make sure I have 99% of the content written within 4 weeks. So I have a couple weeks to do a couple edits, work with the formatting and any kind of details for, quote, digital packaging, whatever that may be. So I just ignored the other things. Oh, I had a full-time job, right? So I was working 8 hours a day at least, maybe a little bit more. So I had to figure out how I was going to manage everything. And like you said, it's kind of an imbalance. So maybe I wouldn't be able to run errands as much, help out around the house. So I would let my wife know it's going to be crazy for the next few weeks. We have a clear end date, so it's not like an ongoing change that's going to happen. And then other than that, it was just a matter of getting up and doing the work and staying motivated, which again, if you have a clear deadline, it's much easier to understand how much you need to get done each day so you can track along, make sure you're on schedule.
Yeah, and really it frees up your brain to focus, right? Because then you don't have to think about as much.
Yes, exactly. And I find myself trying to do this more often now where I'm in a much different position now. I can work on the projects that I want to work on. I don't have a full-time job. So when I'm looking at things to simplify and free my mind up so I can be more effective at the things that I want to work on, I'm trying to figure out things that I can get rid of and not necessarily have an imbalance, but just if I can ignore things for a little while, that's great. One thing I try to do, and maybe unintentionally do as well, is ignore emails for a while. So if I stay active on email and I reply back in a timely manner to everyone, it probably means I'm not getting much work done because I'm spending too much time in the inbox. So I've been trying to pause my inbox and or just not open it except for certain times during the day.
Do you think that your health was impacted at all? Did you like take a break from working out or scale back your routine at all for like eating healthy and exercising?
I think I scaled back some of the long runs, like the hour to 2 hour runs, but I still, it's been a few years, but I still exercise because that is a key piece for my productivity is the stress relief from getting out of the office and doing some strenuous activity. So really helpful. And I think a lot of people, if they do work out on a regular basis, they probably find the same thing. So I wouldn't trim back completely on that, but those really long runs, training runs take forever. And they may wipe you out mentally a little bit more than just staying active, which is what I tried to do. And I'm trying to think if there were any other health hits. I honestly don't remember. I think I do drink a lot of beer, so I'm pretty sure I kept drinking as much and I would just drink a little more coffee. So I suspect if someone actually checked my my health, it got worse, but I made it through on the other side. And I tend to do that kind of a working style where I won't work it that hard now because I don't need to. I definitely didn't get as much sleep back then because I essentially woke up early before the day job started, say 4 a.m., and then I'd work for a couple hours on the book, and then I'd be able to start my normal day. So I was robbing the sleep to get that time for the most part. And I'm trying to think otherwise if there were any other health issues. I probably ate roughly the same. I don't think I ate more junk food or anything like that. I did have a full head of hair back then, though. So yeah, that's it. I did not. I did not.
I did not realize that you were talking about the time when you were still, employed. I thought I just assumed that it was after you became an entrepreneur. So that's interesting.
No, yes, I right away I figured, hey, if I'm going to start a blog, I want to sell a product, and I'm really glad that I did because there's a lot of volatility, especially when you're just getting started with a side hustle. So the fact that I started selling my own products right away and fumbled my way through it and just kept pushing through was really good because as time has gone on, I've used those skills to sell courses and those got more and more popular over the years. When I started in 2013, 2014 timeframe, there were online courses for sure, but not as many. Now there's so many platforms. You can set up a course in an afternoon. There's so many ways to accept payments and all that kind of stuff. But back then it wasn't as easy. As I said, it's been a great set of skills to help me out now.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the effective versus efficient, right? I think it's really interesting that what you just said, you started with a product and that was kind of the start of your side hustle. Um, for comparison's sake, if you are going to start an online business, maybe don't spend like 3 years inconsistently writing blog posts. And that was my introduction to side hustles. And nothing is wrong with blogging, and it certainly was a fun side project for me anyway. But it's I can see the difference in your mindset of what should I start with? You started right away with something income producing, something that would help with stability, since your goal was to leave your corporate job and become an entrepreneur, right?
Actually, no,
Oh
I
no.
didn't. Yeah, I didn't have any interest in entrepreneurship. I was just listening to a few podcasts that were talking about all this stuff, all the side hustle stuff and entrepreneurship, but I'd never identified as an entrepreneur, and that wasn't my goal.
Oh,
So I just kind of
yeah.
eased my way into it. So,
Yeah. Interesting. Um,
and
Go ahead.
I'll take us on a little, actually, go ahead. I'll take us on a tangent later. Sorry.
Just to circle back real quick to the deprioritizing, I I think that it's good because a lot of people try to keep all the balls in the air all the time and feel like if they drop a ball that it's going to be really bad. So I really like the idea, like, it impacted all the different areas of your life. This time you took to write your book and create your website. Um, and I like to think of it for finance as well. I haven't thought about it as like a short term basis, but each year I've set kind of a focus for myself overall. Like I had a health year, and that was the year like I did the marathon and tried to get my health like that was my focus. And other things did suffer. I did drop the ball on some other things, but it helps you with decision making, right? Because then if you have a focus, you know, oh, well, should I spend the next 15 minutes answering email or working on my book? The answer is book. If you're shopping and you say, oh, this thing is organic and healthier, but this thing is cheaper, which do I go with? Having that focused priority, I think helps from that angle. So, I'd have finance years, I'd have health years. I've done like community and family, having my focus be there and working on relationships. But I think people really struggle with making finance their priority. I think a lot of people feel really bad about it. I don't know why there's just this like stigma against, focusing on money or trying to improve your finances. So I
Mm.
really like the idea of prioritizing from that angle.
And did you find when you focus on a thing for a particular year, did you get good habits that followed you along afterwards?
Yeah, the benefit of focusing is, you can really establish those good habits. Because if you're trying to do everything at once, you may or may not be able to establish those good habits. Maybe one day you do a workout and then, you know, it's not the same as going like focusing on your health, going to the gym, every other day consistently, really ingraining it. And then, you can kind of let that ball down and focus on something else, but you have that maintained benefit of having that established habit. And yeah, maybe sometimes you need to revisit it, reprioritize it, but that's how I do it because otherwise I'm just an insane person trying to do all the things, health, finance,
Yeah.
you know.
It's definitely too much. And there's only so many things that you could focus on. It's just stressful. It depends on your
Yeah.
personality too. And I can definitely get stressed out. It's much better if I can just say, hey, you know what? Some little small bad things might happen, maybe not. And then you may realize, hey, not that much really happens at all. That's an idea in the 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. And I'm sure, I mean, it's not his original idea, but yeah, you can let go and let some little bad things happen if you can focus or accomplish things in other areas. It's definitely worth the trade-off.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And it's temporary. You have to remind yourself it's temporary. Yeah, and it's definitely stress management for me because yeah, I'm a stress case. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Let's see. The last thing on the course was values. You included the list on there from Atomic Habits, the book by James Clear, and talked about how values, you want to have your goals in alignment with your values or your values in alignment with your goals. So I wanted to ask you, do you believe that your values change over time? Do you believe you're in control of them and can change them?
I hadn't thought about this until you asked. And I think, yeah, I think you could change them, and it probably makes sense as your interests shift and maybe your life situations change. Not only does it make sense that you would have different values, you probably should. You're also taking inputs and getting different information in, so things would shift in your mind, what's important and what's not. So yeah, I expect they would probably shift quite a bit.
Yeah.
And what was the second part of the answer?
Um, just that you believe you're in control of what you value. Because a lot of people feel like values are really set in stone and there's nothing you can do about them.
Oh, I get, yeah, I'm far more flexible than that. I think if you're intentionally thinking about what you want to spend your time on, then it should be fairly straightforward, what you see as valuable, and then you could probably change your mind based on what you're thinking about. Now, that does mean that you have to intentionally think about what you're spending your time on and not just take what's laid out in front of you, which is what I actually did all the way up until the roughly the 2013 period, where I started checking out the side hustles and eventually led to this full-time thing that I'm doing right now. And just to be specific, I was relatively good at math and science. And then in high school, they said, oh, you should probably be an engineer or something. So I went to an engineering school, got that degree, and they said, you should probably maybe go into consulting or specific engineering. So I did consulting and just kind of coasted. I wasn't particularly good at honestly any of this stuff. I was okay at math and science, but I really wasn't that good with the engineering portion of it. I was okay. And then with the consulting, I was a little bit okay also, but didn't really excel. I'm okay at project management too, but there's no area where I'm really good at it. So that said, it was really easy to coast because it was the easiest, the non-decision to make. It's just whatever was laid out in front of me. That said, once I started thinking, hey, what do I want to spend time on? And I'm still struggling with that. I now can shift my values and think, oh, do I need to really worry about watching my expenses as much as I did before? Not really. I could be kind of stupid like I am and buy expensive beers, but that is a thing that's really valuable to me. So I will spend, 10, 15, $20 on one single can of beer. It's a weird example, but
That is,
I would do the same for steak too, right? I really like food as well. So I'll spend money on like a good cut of meat.
yeah. Okay. So this is great because it sounds it sounds so counterintuitive, right? That you would have to look at or evaluate your values, but there could be conflict between what you value and what you're saying your goal is, right? You mentioned, you have your truck and it's an older truck. Oh, how old was it?
It's a 2005, so 16 years.
Yeah. So that you don't highly value status. Some people highly value it. That's okay. That's something that they value, but identifying that as something that you don't value, that frees you up to make that financial decision. Oh, okay. I don't value this. So, why would I buy a nicer car? So making sure that if you do highly value status, but you want to save more money and pay off debt, those are in conflict. So, which do you value more? Can you deprioritize your status goals and be okay with it being lower temporarily to make progress on this other thing that you also value that's in conflict?
Yep,
Okay,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
gotcha. All right. Well, that was all I had for you. If you don't have anything else to add,
Nope, I'm good.
Well, thank you so much. Where can people find you online?
I'm over on YouTube. I have a lot of videos on affiliate marketing and SEO, some general productivity ideas as well. And then I have a podcast if you're into those. I talk about the same topics on the Doug Show. And I have a new show coming out, which will be in the financial independence and personal finance area. I'm working on with Carl Jensen. So I am not at a point where I could share the name publicly yet, but I'll tell you off the record here in a second. And other than that, Niche Site Project, you could sign up for my email list where you get a lot of tools and templates, the things that I use to run my affiliate sites.
All right. And then, we talked about the Productivity Masterclass. I'll include all the links and I'll include the link in the description for this. Just a quick overview. Was there anything I missed that's in that Productivity Masterclass that you want people to know about?
No, I think the main thing is to help you be effective. So achieve your goals and usually in less time. So it really helps you figure out what you're trying to do, prioritize the things that you need to do, and then execute on that. Hopefully not get distracted by, say, emails like me or sweeping and cleaning unnecessarily just to, avoid your work. So the course helps you get things done in less time.
I love it. I love it. I'm going through the course right now. It's great. And so, yeah, I appreciate you being on the channel so much, Doug. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, bye.